Good morning. It's Jason Dean coming live at you again for yet another edition of Film Fanatic. So yeah, hope everyone's doing good. It's Friday at 11:30. Kind of a rainy, crappy day. Good day to watch. Good weather to watch a movie. But hey, isn't every day a good day to watch a movie? So I'm looking into doing some more shows at some point where I can do more interviews. I really love doing interviews. I have a couple of things possibly set up, but we'll stay tuned for that. Nothing set in stone. I really enjoy doing the interview segments. My last time I did it was actually it was a phone interview, but I don't know. I was really happy with how that came out, and it was with a director, Asif Akbar, who is has worked with some really big names in Hollywood. He's worked with Mickey Rourke, and he was in the middle of shooting a movie with Mel Gibson when I was talking with him. So it was pretty cool. And so that whole show was kind of centered on the. I wanted to try to get kind of the centerpiece of that show from like the director's standpoint. You know what it's like to be a director and to create your own work. You know, whether it's a bigger budget or smaller budget, whether you're doing it totally independently or you're working within the Hollywood system, and also the complexities around distribution, especially now with streaming, and all those things. And it was a really great show, and I really want to try to do more of those shows. The hardest part I find for that kind of a thing is the scheduling. I had a lot of issues too with technical issues around doing live video, and I think it was I wasn't all that experience doing it, but there were also issues I think that were due to my connection here in the fabulous city of Northport. I had lots of problems with my internet connection, so that would be a factor. I have done quite a few of those videos, interviews, and they're all on my channel, but it's been a while and I haven't really done it. Haven't really been able to do them at a consistent level, but there will be more shows coming, so stay tuned for that. It's going to be an interesting, show that I have planned coming up with a local artist or two local artists that just recently did their first kind of video feature that is pretty fabulous. So I'm working on the details of that. That will probably be the next interview. But other than that, I want to do it more. It's really just the logistics of trying to schedule all of those things. But anyway, so I just did a show recently, or actually just a little while ago, and I'm going to be uploading it today for a movie that I just watched for the very first time. I just went to Bull Moose last week, and I got one of the movies I bought was Curse of the Blue Lights. Amazing movie. I watched it. I've watched it twice. I actually watched it twice in one night. Never seen it before. Was totally blown away. And so when that show is up, which will probably be up pretty soon, check it out. And I love when people comment on the videos. There's been more and more action as far as that stuff goes. I love interacting with other people that are into film, and especially it's hilarious. There was a guy, I just did a show also on Dune 2, which is just a masterpiece, I think. And I saw it in the theater with some friends. And I just had a guy comment on the video, and he, well, basically trashed it beyond belief, hated it. He totally fucking hated the movie. And he's like really angry and just like pissed off at the movie, like took it personally, or I haven't responded yet, but I'm going to. But I think it's hilarious how people like. I don't know. I love living in a world where I don't want to live in a world where everybody has their own has the same opinion, But there's a line I think where there's like people who kind of know, more or less they're grounded in some kind of reality and they kind of maybe know what they're talking about. I don't know. They have a little bit of a education in a certain thing in a certain field, or or through certain about a certain viewpoint, or I don't know. And then people who, I don't know, just don't really know what the hell they're talking about. But anyway, that's besides the point. It's all opinion. So, but today's show is on a movie that I started to shoot the video for this movie that I'm going to be talking about. But then some stuff came up and I wasn't able to finish it. And it was a longer video. And I paused the video. I was going to go back to it. But then I was like, well, screw it. I'll just redo it. So today is going to be take two of this show. And one of my favorite YouTube guy who I've talked about a lot is Moods616. That guy is just so awesome. He's a YouTuber. He's from Canada. He's based in Canada. And he is he's got I think 15,000 movies that he owns. Like, it's insane. It's completely insane. The guy is so knowledgeable. He's definitely my favorite YouTube guy when it comes to movies. He is the most knowledgeable person that I know. And he is the most open-minded and has the most mind-bogglingly insane collection of films I've ever seen. His specialty, he covers all kinds of genres and all kinds of films, but his specialty, I feel, is definitely in the world of exploitation. So I've discovered so many cool movies through watching his channel, and movies that I loved when I was a kid, or that I saw when I was a kid back in the day of VHS. And, you know, with all of these boutique labels that now exist, they've released a lot of these movies or re-released a lot of these films. Amazing. And then also, you know, probably overall, I've probably discovered movies, new and old movies that I've never seen before through this channel. And today is on a movie. He did a big movie haul the other day, and one of the movies that he talked about was this incredibly gross little movie here called Dead Girl. And I have a little bit of a funny story. This movie came out in 2008. So I had heard about this movie a bunch of times, and about 2 or 3 weeks ago, a friend of mine who is very much into horror films, she's into a lot of, you know, real low budget indie horror films, but she seems to really know a lot about more modern or contemporary kind of indie horror films. A lot of movies that I end up like missing or, you know, pass me by. So she's like, you know, really into a lot of those films. And so one of the movies she's talked about and that she's told me to recommend was Dead Girl. And I had never seen it before. And it's funny because I go to Opera House Video, which is the local video shop where you actually can rent movies. And I thought at the time, okay, I've seen that movie in the aisles. I've seen it there at Opera House Video. And after she told me about it, I was like, you know, yeah, I have seen that. I've seen it, the box for it. I've never seen the movie. I've seen the cover. I've seen it that they have at Opera House Video. And then fast forward just last week, Moods616 put up a new video, and one of the shows, and in the video, one of the movies he was talking about was Dead Girl, and that he had just bought it. So that kind of put me over the edge into thinking, okay, I need to see this movie. So 2 days later, I went to Opera House Video and I asked my friend Dennis Howard, who's the owner of the shop, hey, you guys have Dead Girl, right? And because I looked for it, couldn't find it. I looked in the horror section, couldn't find it. And I thought, well, maybe I missed it. Or maybe it's like, say, in the action or the suspense area, because sometimes that happens. So what I did was I looked around for it, and then he looked for it, and he's like, oh yeah, we have it. And he found it in the suspense section, which is like adjacent to the horror section at the shop. at Opera House Video. So then he picked it out for me, and I looked at it, and I was like, no, wait, this, I don't think this is the same movie. And I looked at the cover, and it said The Dead Girl. And I had saved Dead Girl to my phone. I saved the, I had basically found an ad for the movie, and I tagged it to my, or tagged it to my profile page so I could remember it as a reference when I went there. And I was like, oh wait, and I looked it up. I'm like, nope, that's a different movie. It's spelled differently. This one is called just Dead Girl. And the movie that he picked out was The Dead Girl, and it starred Brittany Murphy, who was a pretty famous actress who tragically died pretty young. And her biggest, probably her most well-known movie was she was in 8 Mile with Eminem. But she was a great actress, and I'm like, no, like that's not the same movie. So I was like, oh damn. And then so he looked it up, and realized that it's not the same movie. So I was kind of bummed, and and that was that. So then went to Opera House Video. I went to Bull Moose on Monday. I had a doctor's appointment up in Bangor, and I figured, well, aside from just going up there for a stupid doctor's appointment, I'll try to make a day of it, and I'll go up to Bull Moose. So I went to Bull Moose, and one of the movies that I found right away was Dead Girl. And in the review, or the quick little review that Moods had given for this movie, he basically just said that this movie is just a horrendously gross experience. It's just totally nasty and totally disgusting, but amazing. And so I was like, okay. And he didn't say anything about it, which I love. I love about how he goes about doing his little reviews about films, because he never does the spoiler thing. He doesn't even do, a lot of the times he just doesn't even go into, sometimes he won't even go into the synopsis of what a film. He'll just talk about whether he really liked it or not, or if it made him excited. Sometimes he will, but he doesn't go into any detail. And I love that he does that, because that's one of the influences that I try to do on this show. Is I want the person, if they do check out a movie that I recommend, I want them to try to go into that experience cold, and to experience it fresh, without any kind of outside interference. And so that's what I did with this movie. I did not know what it was about. I did see this also last year or the year before. It was a trailer on one of the movies I have, or that I had seen, and I saw the trailer for this, and I was like, yeah, this movie looks kind of fucked up. I don't know what it's about, but the trailer was great. I know it involves a group of teenagers and a dead girl, but that's about it. So I went into it totally cold, and I saw this movie there, and it's a beautiful package. It was a little bit expensive, but I was like, fuck it. This movie is definitely a kind of a low budget horror film. It's a newer film. It came out in 2008. It came out in 2008, so it's been out for a while, and I'm not gonna watch it online, because it's gonna not be great quality. So I decided, okay, screw it, I'm just gonna buy it. And the other thing that I was sold on was that it has tons of special features on here. So I'm hoping, well, at least if I like this movie, there'll be a shit ton of cool special features, which is more bang for your buck as far as I'm concerned. So I bought it, and it was I don't know, $23. Again, a little bit more expensive for something that I've never seen, taking a chance, but it was a beautiful package, nice little slipcase. And then it's got this artwork here. It's an American movie also. And I watched it the other night, and I have to say, this movie is pretty fucking nasty. It's super fucking nasty. Definitely more or less what Moods had said in his show, and what my friend had said about this movie. And she's really great about not giving spoilers. It's a filthy nasty movie. It's generally it's shocking. It's shocking as all hell, and it's got incredible atmosphere. It's super creepy. It's very good. The thing that I love about this movie too is it's really original. It's a really interesting kind of story scenario that I've never seen in horror. It's a different kind of dynamic. It's not predictable at all. It has like interesting elements of different kinds of genres. I think like it's got a very it's very suspense driven, almost like a Hitchcock kind of thing. But it has a suspense live driven kind of vibe to it. Um, Definitely a super creepy horror vibe to it as well. Almost a little bit of a slasher vibe. It has a zombie kind of aesthetic to it also, even though it's not really any of those things. It's very graphic, very gory. You know, almost like a modern day kind of video nasty kind of vibe. It has kind of a European kind of vibe to it, and it's interesting because it's like super low budget. I like it because it's a very contained movie. It's all for the most part shot in one space with like a limited amount of actors, and it's pretty self-contained, and it's definitely low budget, but it has this kind of a big budget as vibe to it as well. Like it's got this really low production value, but yet it has a high production value. Like it feels like the filmmakers really maximized their finances to make this movie, and it has the acting is really good. Like the acting is really great. There's no actors in this film that I had ever seen before, so it's all unknown actors, at least to me. And there's again the special features are just fabulous. It was directed by there's two directors involved with the film, Gadi Harrell and Marcel Sarmento, two different directors. And there is a really awesome interview with the directors in this film. And a real interesting thing is they talked about their background. It was their first feature, and their background before they became full-on directors was they were working at a trauma company, the trauma company, the infamous exploitation company that has put out all kinds of like gloriously shitty movies for 30 years or 40 years, the 60s, 70s, 80s, spearheaded by the legendary Lloyd Kaufman. They're probably their I mean, so many great films to their credit as under the Trauma label, but probably the biggest character or series of films that came out of Trauma were the or are the Toxic Avenger movies, masterpieces. But Lloyd Kaufman and Trauma like specialize in just really ridiculous, over the top, gore ridden, splatter exploitation movies. Uh, Amazing. I wish I've seen so many Trauma movies and I love them to death. I think it's one of the best, the greatest companies ever, and I think one of the most important. You know, that's where the creators, Trey and or I should say, the creators of South Park, they came out of Trauma also. Cannibal the Musical was a Trauma release, and that's where they got their start. And Trauma is just one of the best kind of exploitation horror companies in existence. Like amazing. And I don't really own a lot of Trauma films. I do own a few. I actually just bought a Trauma film, which I'm super excited to watch. But just legendary sleazy, shitty movies. So it was very interesting where these guys were talking how they came out of that. They worked on various films as like they worked on special effects on certain films. They worked producing a bunch of different things, and that was their background. And you can kind of see the Trauma influence in this movie. It's very interesting, but yet the tone is very different. The directors were talking about in the special features how they, obviously they didn't want to go the Trauma route with this movie. they wanted it to be way more grounded and serious and not, so ridiculously over the top. So, but you can still see the trauma influence in this movie, even though it's very serious and it's totally bizarre. It's totally fucking insane. There actually is some really good humor in this movie, which I think is much appreciated in this movie because it's brutal and disgusting. Like you really, I had to pause this movie. I have a high threshold for violence and shocking things when if I see them. Um, but I found myself I had to like kind of pause the movie a couple times to kind of like take a breath and to kind of chill out because it was so shocking. And I'm like, wow, okay, they're going there. And again, I don't want to, really go into detail about what I saw in this movie. I want people to experience this for themselves, but I definitely recommend it. But it's not for the faint of heart. You'll definitely want to take a long shower after this movie. It's not it's not a wholesome family experience. It's a fucked up movie, but it's really well done. And again, getting back to the trauma influence, you can see that these guys came out of that world, but it's much more serious, and it does have those different elements. It's got the suspense, it's got the a little bit of the slasher vibe to it, maybe at times, and it actually it has a zombie aesthetic to it, but it's 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 not any of those things at the same time. It's really interesting. It's neither of any of those things. It's its own thing, but it's shocking. But the thing is, it's not like shocking for the sake of being shocking. Sometimes that happens with movies and television shows nowadays, where I've seen it. I watched a television show recently. I can't remember the name of it, but it was pretty much just trash. But it had so much violence and so much sex in the movie. And at first it was like kind of cool and it worked for the story. But then you realize that the movie or the TV show really lacked good writing. So it was like they were overcompensating because they didn't really have a story that they could really continue from episode to episode. And I feel like they were limited, so they were just like, okay, let's just put as much shocking sex and violence into the movie as we can, and it like that became the feature or the main focus of the show, and it turned me off because I love violence, I love all those things, but at the end of the day, it's got to have atmosphere and it's got to have characters or some even semblance of a story that is interesting. It's got to pull me in, regardless if it's like whatever style of film it is. And Dead Girl really has that. It's I have to say it's one of the most original movies, even though this came out for 2008, so it's been out for a while, and I'm just seeing it for the first time. It's got one of the most original screenplays I've seen. It's very original. It's not predictable. The ending is bonkers. It has a lot of interesting twists to it, and it doesn't kind of follow. It doesn't really have your typical horror tropes. There's a one or two jump scares in the movie, but they're really good. You don't really see them coming. So this movie has, at its core, it's got a really cool script and very original. And I loved how, again, like I mentioned, it's really self-contained. It all kind of takes place. It's kind of like that classic, Reservoir Dog scenario where, that was Tarantino's first movie, and it's a masterpiece. But one of the things that makes that movie so good is that it's so self-contained. It could be a play, but it's self-contained for the most part in one set with just like a handful of actors, and it's like a character study on how these people interact, and it's real self-contained. This movie has that kind of vibe to it. It's very focused that way, But the story is very original, and that's the thing that's what I liked about it. And it's got great atmosphere, and you know the shocking nature of the movie is, I feel, is needed, and it works in the context of the movie. You know, that to me is good filmmaking, regardless, whether or not this movie is too much for people to watch. But I can't recommend this movie enough. 2008, but I definitely consider this to be a more modern kind of horror film. It's definitely an indie horror film, low budget but with a really big production value. The sound design in this movie is really really good. It's the Blu-ray transfer of this movie is pretty spectacular. I'm really excited to watch this movie again, even though it's generally hard to watch, but I still recommend this movie. It's killer. And I want to thank Moods 616 for the awesome little recommendation. So thanks again, and we will see you next time. Peace.